Yes. So we are in week 4 of our holiday series regarding the Christmas story, also called the Infancy narratives, so that we can openly explore what we believe to be true about the traditional story of Jesus' birth. And by the end of today, we will have traveled 360 degrees in idea. And we did this purposely to create the opportunity for each of you to explore your thoughts and beliefs, to have the opportunity to openly question what you think you know to be true, and if it still fits who you've become on your spiritual journey. And so for each of us, we get to now choose what is it we want to believe. If we will cling to the story we learned in preschool, the one that we still teach Unity preschool students, or if you will expand your mind and heart to have a different level of awakening and experience regarding this story, and embrace a new thought. I will be honest, and for myself personally, I must share that it is not an either or, it is a yes and. I embrace the preschool story with the love and the delight that it has to offer, and yet I crave the metaphysical interpretation so that I can embrace the Bible stories and apply them to who I am here, today, now. You get to choose for yourself. It may not be an either or. It could be a yes and. So we began our exploration with the words of the prophets. We began our series with looking at the Christ and what it is to be the Christ presence in the world. And then we focused on Joseph. And it was not so much his lineage of birth or not that we found to be important. What we know to be important about the person or character Joseph is that he represents in our lives spiritual understanding. Last week, we focused on the person known to be Mary and the teachings surrounding the virgin birth, including whether or not she was still a virgin at the time of her death, as they voted upon in 431. But that is not what is important. What is important to us in applying the wisdom of these stories is to know that she represents not only in the story, but in our lives, unconditional love, accepting, protecting, trust, love. And so to move into the wisdom of this story, we claim not only our deep intuition, the pure essence of our soul, who can receive inspiration from Spirit. We recognize that the virgin state of our mind or consciousness is our pure essence, and we each have that. So when we consider our own spiritual intuition being quickened by this process of study, I hope that each of you have recognized that as you grow in spiritual maturity and understand the depth of love you are capable of, that you can recognize that you have been quickened. You can trust your intuition and the guidance that you receive in dreams, as Joseph did and as Mary had to do. That in fact you can trust your intuition and guidance so completely that you can release any perceived negativity or resistance. That is our path should we choose to accept it. It's about complete surrender to the inspiration and guidance that you receive. It's a complete surrender to the truth at the core of your being. So this week, we focus on Jesus, the infant Jesus. And as you know, the traditional story in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, verses 1 through 40, the travel to the town of Bethlehem for a census that may not have happened really at that time in history, but that's okay. And for the adopted boy, Joseph, of a 6th generation prior adopted boy into the lineage of David, possibly tied to Adam and Eve, depending upon which gospel you're already reading, but that's neither here nor there. And the story of the unwed pregnant mother, who could have been stoned to death by Hebrew law. She gave birth in a stable filled with animals and shepherds, and don't forget the star that guided the 3 wise men. And then the drummer boy showed up, and Rudolph was there, and Frosty came singing with his corncob pipe. Oh, no. I get my songs confused with my studies, and it's just all a blur. What are we teaching our people in culture when you've got Frosty and baby Jesus and all this? It's like, it's confusing to a young mind. It's confusing to a not so young mind too. But I want to share another version of the nativity story that I came across. In this story, it says that upon arriving in Bethlehem, the inn was overcrowded. Joseph sought out lodging with distant relatives, but every room in the inn was filled to overflowing. So returning to the courtyard of the inn, he was informed the caravan stables that were hewn out of the side of a rock and situated just below the inn had been cleared of the animals and cleaned up for the reception of lodgers. They found themselves located in what had been a grain storage room to the front of the stalls and the mangers. Tent curtains had been consciously hung up, and they counted themselves so very fortunate to have such comfortable quarters. All night, Mary was restless with the pangs of childbirth underway. And at noon on August 21st, 7 BC, with the help of some kind fellow women travelers, Mary was delivered of a male child. Jesus of Nazareth was born into the world, was wrapped in the clothes which Mary had brought along her travels for such a possible contingency, and laid him in a nearby manger. The next day, Joseph made his enrollment, meeting a man that they had talked to 2 nights previously at Jericho. Joseph was taken to the inn by him to meet a well-to-do friend who had a room at the inn, who said that he would gladly exchange his living quarters for the Nazarene couple and their newborn child. So that very afternoon, they moved up into the inn where they lived for 3 weeks until they found lodgings at the home of a distant relative of Joseph, and ultimately remained in Bethlehem for more than a year. However, the 2nd day after the birth of her son, Mary sent word to her cousin Elizabeth, sharing the good news of her child's arrival. There were no shepherds nor any other mortal creatures that came to pay homage to the babe of Bethlehem until the arrival of a certain priests from who were sent down from Jerusalem by Zacharias, who, as you remember, is Elizabeth's husband and John the Baptist's father. The story here is that the priests from Mesopotamia had been sometime told a while ago from a strange religious teacher in their own town that he had a dream in which he was informed that the light of life was about to appear on earth in the form of a babe and would be among the Jews. And so the priests set out to find this light of life. It was Zacharias himself that had disclosed to these priests that it was his belief that Jesus was the object of their quest, and sent them off to Bethlehem, where they found the babe and left their gifts with his earth mother, Mary. The babe was 3 weeks old by the time of their visit. These wise men saw no star in the sky to guide them to Bethlehem. The beautiful legend of the star originated in this way. Jesus, being born on August 21st at noon, 7 BC, during that year, 3 extraordinary things happened. On May 29th, there occurred an extraordinary conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in the constellation of Pisces. And it is a remarkable astronomic fact that the similar conjunctions occurred in that same year on September 29th and December 5th. And so woven into the story is this bright light when the planets come together. Have you not noticed these incredible lights in the sky? Planets. So 3 times in the same year, this occurrence happened. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. So then, as now, our minds delight in the fancy fairy tale stories of lively characters and lovable animals and cat videos on YouTube. You all are laughing. You love those cat videos on YouTube. So we are no different now than the people of old who wanted to know and love and explore the fanciful story and expand and embellish it. Because in a time of oral tradition, it is easy for myths to become traditions, to become fact. Have you not had that in the story of your own life? You can tell your own story so many times that it could be written in a novel. And then we have to unlearn the story through our healing process, but that's another talk for another day. And so we know that the narrative of the infancy birth was not written specifically because it happened that way. It happened to fulfill the prophecies. The people did not question, and they did not care. Usually, we think that the Christmas story is begun with the birth of Jesus, but that's not really quite accurate. 600 years before, in the prophecy of Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7, it states, "So unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." 600 years before. So symbolically and metaphysically, we remember that this is our story. It is the awakening of our spiritual consciousness. Joseph, as we looked at a couple weeks ago, was all about spiritual understanding, our spiritual understanding. And Mary represented spiritual love, our spiritual love. And when these two aspects of ourself work in conjunction with one another, they prepare ourselves for the divine awakening in our mind, in our heart, in our physical being. That is the birth of the Christ child. It is the son or daughter of God. It is you and you and you and you and you. And all of you in between. Without consciously integrating and mindfully using that winning combination of wisdom and love that is already a part of the package, and we'll get to that when we talk about the 12 powers later in the year. It's already in you. Everything you need is already, it's part of the original package. You don't have to get the extras and the upgrade. It's the original package. So when we forget who we are as divine beings, and when we forget to use our spiritual gifts, we are blessed to bring forth what would be called malformations. We bring forth error thinking. We bring forth things that we call or judge as a mistake when we forget who we are and what our gifts are, and that we can use them in every breath. So it must be accepted that in order for each of us to fulfill our spiritual path, the mind must work with the heart. Love must work with wisdom. And from that creative place, when our Christ spirit, our Christ expression is manifest, we can do miraculous things. We can create miraculous experiences. You all created this building, this experience, this ministry, because you joined your mind and your heart with an intention. And we're doing that once again with revitalizing this ministry. So for example, personally, there are aspects within my own divine possibility that I know I haven't manifested yet, and I maybe have an inkling that would be true about you. There's divine potential within you that you haven't manifested yet, that you haven't created yet, that you haven't pushed or birthed into expression. At least not yet. There's plenty of time. We have all afternoon. So the birth of the Christ is not something that happens only on December 5th, when as a culture it was decided upon that we would celebrate the presence of the Christ on that day. Truly, it happens each and every day of our lives. When we are in balance in our mind and heart, when we are centered in our spiritual truth and the reality of who we are. When we are conscious and awake. And so in the story, the Jesus child, the infant, represents the point at which each one of us come into the awareness of our innate divinity. It's like all of a sudden, wow, I've got this potential, I've got this power, I've got this presence. Do you remember what it was to feel that awakening? That's the awakening that needs to bubble up each and every day. When you are consciously aware and you recognize that the Christ presence is born in me. We're going to affirm that together. The Christ presence is born in me. Let's do it once more with gusto. The Christ presence is born in me. Yes. That's the one that I see when you all come out of meditation. that pure vessel of divine is expressed on your faces by just a few minutes in prayer, meditation. So by awakening our consciousness to be in alignment with the pure unconditional love and our innate wisdom, when we accept the idea that that is the truth of our nature and embrace it and love it and live it, we are the Christ presence in the world. However, when the in of our consciousness, the in, I-N-N, building such as, when the in of our consciousness is too full to allow a divine idea to take hold, because, the human self, we have all the answers. When our mind is too full, when we know too much, and we're unable to allow the inner to expand outward, when we're too busy to allow the divine appointment to unfold and allow the inner whisper of the still, small voice to speak, that's when you are experiencing there's no room at the inn. It's all about consciousness. In Unity, we tie everything back to our awakened or not so awakened consciousness. When our in of consciousness is filled with all the things that we hope for, all the things that we grasp toward, rather than knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt and trust and allow our good to unfold, to affirm that our good is already there. It's about us awakening to receive it. That's when we find a new direction, a new opportunity, a new possibility, a new idea, a new way of being the light in the world. So our abundant life that we want so much is crowded out by the random, useless thoughts that we allow to flow through the creative chamber of the mind. Meditation is the way to clear and allow the voice from within to be the true voice that you hear. So the birth of Jesus is really the birth of the spiritual awakening in each one of us. It is our story. It is our awakening. It is our spiritual salvation. Christmas Day is every day when we choose to be awake and celebrate the birth of the Christ consciousness in our minds, in our hearts, and in our souls. So simply put, the infancy narratives in the gospel are not to be read as historical fact. They are theological affirmations of Jesus' status as the anointed of God. He to us is our way shower. He shows us the way to live from that awakened state, so that we, each one of us and all of our brothers and sisters on the planet, could live in such a way that we need never think we are separate from our God, our source, our truth. You never need to think that. You can. but you don't need to. And so this concludes our 360-degree exploration of the infancy narratives, so that each one of us may be truly awake when we come together this Saturday evening for Christmas Eve candlelight to celebrate the birth of the Christ presence within ourselves in a very conscious way. I look forward to seeing you then. Namaste.